Tensions soared in South Asia, reaching a boiling point that had been simmering for years. As India launched airstrikes against targets within Pakistan, a move that shocked the region and the world. The Indian government claimed these strikes were retaliatory, a necessary response to a grave provocation. They cited a deadly attack in Indian-controlled Kashmir, blaming it on Pakistan-based terrorist groups, which had long been a source of tension. According to India, the airstrikes focused on terrorist infrastructure directly tied to the Kashmir attack, aiming to dismantle the operational capabilities of these groups. This action marked a dangerous escalation between the two nations, both possessing nuclear weapons, raising fears of a potential nuclear confrontation. Indian officials stressed that the airstrikes were not an act of war, but a defensive measure to protect their citizens. They termed it a non-military preemptive action with a laser focus on dismantling terrorist camps, ensuring that the strikes were precise and targeted. Their objective, they stated, was to target only terrorist operatives and minimize civilian casualties, a point they emphasized repeatedly. The strikes, India claimed, were carried out with precision to limit collateral damage, showcasing their advanced military capabilities. This, they argued, demonstrated India's resolve to combat terrorism while adhering to international norms, a stance they hoped would garner international support. Pakistan, however, offered a starkly different narrative, challenging India's version of events. They disputed India's claims, stating that the airstrikes resulted in no casualties and that the targets were not terrorist camps. The damage, they asserted, was minimal and confined to a sparsely populated area, questioning the effectiveness and intent of the strikes. Pakistan condemned the strikes as an act of unprovoked aggression, a violation of their sovereignty. They vowed to respond appropriately while defending their sovereignty and territorial integrity, preparing their military for any potential escalation. The international community reacted with deep concern, recognizing the potential for a broader conflict. This escalation between two nuclear-armed neighbors set off alarm bells globally, with many fearing the worst. World leaders urged both India and Pakistan to exercise restraint, fearing a rapid deterioration into a wider conflict that could have devastating consequences. The situation remained highly volatile, with the next steps by either side carrying immense weight as the world watched anxiously. In a swift response to the Indian airstrikes, Pakistan unleashed retaliatory fire across the border. Artillery exchanges erupted across the line of control, the de facto border in the disputed region of Kashmir, leading to intense military engagements. Amidst the chaos, Pakistan claimed to have successfully shot down 2 Indian fighter jets during the engagement, showcasing the wreckage as proof. Furthermore, they announced the capture of an Indian pilot, which significantly escalated tensions and brought the conflict to a fever pitch. Despite the intense exchange of fire, Pakistan maintained that their actions were not intended to escalate the conflict further. They argued that their military maneuvers were purely defensive, aimed at protecting their sovereignty and deterring further aggression from India. Pakistan framed their response as a measured and proportionate reaction to India's initial strike, emphasizing that it was aimed at deterring further hostilities. In the midst of the heightened tensions, Pakistan called for calm and de-escalation, urging both sides to step back from the brink of war. In a significant move aimed at easing tensions, Pakistan later released the captured Indian pilot, a gesture that was seen as a step towards peace. This gesture, they stated, was a testament to their commitment to peace and a desire to de-escalate the volatile situation. The pilot's release was met with cautious optimism by the international community, though the underlying tensions between the two nations remained palpable. The international community continued to monitor the situation closely, with many nations expressing concern over the potential for further escalation. Calls for restraint from both sides intensified, with the United Nations and other international bodies urging both nations to exercise caution. World leaders, particularly from the United States, China, and other major powers, urged India and Pakistan to engage in dialogue and find a peaceful resolution. They stressed the need for diplomacy to address the underlying issues and prevent the crisis from spiraling out of control, emphasizing the importance of maintaining regional stability. The international community reacted with a mixture of alarm and urgency to the escalating conflict between India and Pakistan. The situation quickly became a focal point of global concern, with leaders from various nations expressing their apprehensions and calling for immediate action to prevent further escalation. The specter of a military confrontation between two nuclear-armed states sent shockwaves through the global community. The potential for catastrophic consequences was evident, and the world watched with bated breath as tensions mounted. The United Nations Secretary-General issued an urgent call for both sides to exercise maximum restraint. In a strongly worded statement, he emphasized the need for immediate de-escalation and the importance of dialogue in resolving the conflict. He urged them to immediately cease hostilities and engage in dialogue to prevent the situation from spiraling out of control. The Secretary-General's appeal was echoed by numerous international leaders who stressed the importance of diplomacy over military action. The United States, a key player in the region, also stepped in. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, U.S. officials made it clear that they were ready to assist in any way possible to defuse the tensions. They strongly urged de-escalation and offered their services as a mediator between the two countries. The U.S. emphasized the critical need for both sides to come to the negotiating table and work towards a peaceful resolution. The U.S. emphasized the importance of avoiding further military action and finding a peaceful resolution through diplomatic channels. They highlighted the potential for a devastating conflict and the necessity of immediate and effective communication between the two nations. China, a close ally of Pakistan, echoed these concerns. Chinese officials called for calm and restraint, urging both nations to prioritize peace and stability in the region. They called for restraint from both sides, urging a peaceful resolution to the crisis. China's involvement underscored the international dimension of the conflict and the widespread desire for a non-violent solution. The international community recognized the potential for a wider conflict. The stakes were incredibly high, and the possibility of a broader regional war loomed large. This region was already grappling with numerous challenges, including poverty, terrorism, and political instability. The added threat of a military conflict only exacerbated these issues, making the need for a peaceful resolution even more urgent. The presence of nuclear weapons on both sides added a terrifying dimension to the conflict, significantly raising the stakes. The potential for a nuclear confrontation was a chilling prospect that the world could not afford to ignore. The urgency for a peaceful resolution was palpable, with the world watching anxiously. The international community's collective call for restraint and dialogue underscored the critical need for a swift and peaceful end to the hostilities. The recent airstrikes bore striking similarities to the 2019 Balakot strikes, further raising anxieties. In that instance, India targeted what it claimed was a Jaish-e-Mohammed terrorist camp located inside Pakistan. This followed a suicide bombing in Indian-controlled Kashmir, which India blamed on the Pakistan-based group. The parallels between the two events were stark and worrisome. The 2019 strikes also triggered a retaliatory strike by Pakistan. This tit-for-tat exchange brought the two countries dangerously close to a full-blown war. The situation eventually de-escalated after intense international pressure and diplomatic efforts. However, the similarities between the two events raised serious concerns about a recurring pattern of escalation and the potential for miscalculation. The international community watched nervously, drawing comparisons to the 2019 crisis. They questioned whether the current situation would follow a similar trajectory or escalate further. The outcome, many feared, would depend on the actions of both India and Pakistan and the effectiveness of international diplomatic efforts. The stakes were incredibly high, with the world holding its breath.